In this video, I am going to show you the code first workflow in action. So let's jump to Visual Studio. Here I am going to create a new console application called Code First Demo. So similar to our last lecture, we need to install Entity Framework here. So for that, move to Tools, NuGet Package Manager Console. Here we need to write command install package entity framework, hit enter. Great. Now move back to program.cs file. Let me just move it. Here we need to create a new class called post. Here I have added few properties to this class, and you see that this class is exactly looking the same, the one that entity framework created for us in the another video. But in this lecture I created it by hand. Now in companion to this class I also need a DB context. Do you remember DB context? It is an abstraction over the database that we use to load our saved data. So let's create a class called blog DB context, which should be derived from DB context class. Okay, add a property here of type dbset. Basically, all we have to do here is to create a class that derives from DB context and exposed one or more DB sets. In this case, we are exposing DB set of post. Now we need to specify the connection string to the database. So jump to app config file, and here I am going to create a new connection string element and adding a connection there. Okay. For the sake of time, I have already done some configuration. Let me paste the code here. Okay. So I have given the name to my connection is blog db context, and then this is the actual connection string, and its name depends upon your server name. In my case, it is Vibhu and some digits. Okay. Now we have two more things here. Initial catalog, which should be the name of database, and another is integrated security. In my case, I am using window authentication, so just type SSPI here. One more element that we need to add to our connection string is provider name, which should be system.data.sql client. Okay. Now I am again going to package manager console. We need to enable code first migrations here. So in order to enable that migration, we just run a command enable migrations. Wait for a while. As you see, installation is done for my current project. Now, out of these few steps that I have done so far, like installation of entity framework, addition of connection string, and enabling migrations, these are the steps that we need to do only once. That's it. Every time we want to make a change in our model, we start with the code. So in this case, switch to program.cs file. For example, we create a new class here called posts, or if you want to modify it, These are some cases where we need to make the changes. Now, every time we make it a change to our model, we need to create a migration. So again, jump to Package Manager console. Here we need to run a command add migration. Here we need to specify a name that represents the kind of change we have made. For example, in this case, let's add create post because we are creating a new class here with a few properties. Hit enter. Let's see what happened. So I should go back to the Solution Explorer, and here you see we have got two files under migration folder. Okay, the first one is my migration file. Note that it has a date timestamp and a description, and this is very similar to the migration of script that we created manually in my last video. Remember, I had to create a change script there. This is exactly the same process but in a more automated fashion. Let's see what's inside this file. Open it. So interestingly, we don't need any SQL code here, and you can see that it is a plain C# code. There is one class called createPost which is derived from DB migration class, and it has two methods, up and down. Up method is used to upgrade the database, and down method is used to downgrade the same. So with code first migrations, we can take any database and take it to any other version. Okay, now let's see what's happening inside this method. Here we are making a call to a function called create table. It tries to create a table called posts with these columns. Here id is an integer, it is not nullable, and it is identity. Date published is a date time and it is not nullable, as you can see here. And we have two more columns, title and body. Both of them are of type string. And finally here there is a call to primary key method. It specifies that id column should be set as primary key. So the interesting thing here is Entity Framework uses conversion over configuration. So when it looks at our model, in this case our post class, based on the name and type of our properties, it can figure out how the database should look like. For example, it knows that ID is typically used for the primary key and often it is an identity column. So it automatically added these exceptions here. So we created a code first migration. The next step is to run it. When we run it, Entity Framework looks at the database. It takes the current version, which I'll show you later, and then figure out what migrations need to be run on the database to bring it up to date. So to run the migration, we again jump back to Package Manager console. Here we need to run a command package update database. Hit enter. After running this command, let's see the result. I am going back to Management Studio. Here I am going to refresh my databases. Here you see code first demo. It was created based on our code. I haven't write any SQL code to create the same. Now let's expand it and see we have posts table here. Let's check out the columns. See, these columns are exactly like the one we created in database first demo. So as you saw with the code first workflow, we simply focus on our code and let Entity Framework take care of generating or migrating a database for us. That's it from this video. In my upcoming video, I am going to give you a comparison between database first and code first approach of Entity Framework. Thanks for watching.